God created us in tribes.
And that was just meant to identify you. As far as a person who is superior in you is concerned, that is not for you to judge, because this is God's domain. And as far as God is concerned, He's going to judge you on the basis of your piety and your God consciousness. So you see, this is a message that comes across, I would say, in a very loud way, but it's a forgotten lesson. And it says that as human beings, we are all members of the same humankind family, regardless of our caste, creed, ethnicity, language, any sort of barriers that we might have. Our first connection is humanity itself. Our first connection, and I can perhaps say this even more vociferously, that not just our first connection, our first religion is humanity. To connect to each other in a way that we know that all of us have the same fraternity that we share. Therefore, being individuals living in any part of the world, we are not just citizens of our own country, we are citizens of the globe. So, whatever happens at any part of the globe, in any place, should have an effect on us, and it should really move us when people are in misery, maybe far off in California or in some other isolated place. So, it's like that connection that we must have. So, the first thing that as individuals living in the West and the challenge that we face, it springs from the fact that we must regard ourselves to be members of the same fraternity, and we must not judge each other on that basis. Judgment is one thing which we must leave to God. Our own exercise in this regard and our own undertaking should be that whatever we think to be correct in our own domain, in our own circumstances, we should adopt that, and at the same time tolerate and respect other people's views. This respect and this tolerance is something that has to be maintained at all levels. And just to let you know that when we're living in the West, when we're living in countries like Australia, the UK, the US, Canada, and all over Europe, there is one thing that stares us in the eye, and that is that what exactly should we do to people who are different from us? So I think the first challenge that stares in our eye, on the one hand, is that we belong to the same fraternity. We are human beings. We are like brothers and sisters to one another. But then there is another challenge, that people who have a different orientation, in particular, who have a different gender orientation, who identify themselves to be in a different way, they might have some same gender inclination. So the LGBTQ community, for example, is one area in which this challenge stares us in the eye, that what exactly should parents do and what exactly should children do, because they are everywhere. They're part of our community. They are they're in your schools, in your faculty, in your workplaces, in your neighborhood. They're everywhere. So what exactly should our attitude towards them be? And I, for one, I do realize that this is a challenge which Desi parents do face. But the thing is that the way they would normally advise their children in this regard is that to stay away from such individuals. Not only just stay away, there is this element of hate that they inculcate. And not only hate, this is like they demean them, they think that they are a step lower to them. So I think this is one area that we have to revisit and must regard every person created by God to be a human being. You have your difference of opinion, and that you are free to express, but in no way are we individuals who should hate individuals, because you see, each one of us have our own faults. If someone has a different area in which you think that he is or she is wrong, I can have the same, I could be wrong in some other areas. So I think one thing that we need to understand is that we have to respect people of all orientations. I go as far as saying that we can even fight for their rights as human rights without actually agreeing with what they stand for. So when I say that every LGBTQ community member should be given the same human rights, for example, any quota that should distinguish or make him distinct or discriminate against him or her should not be put up with, because this is a human right. But at the same time, while supporting their rights, I have a right to differ with their orientation. So my stance is that you live and let live. If people are of this orientation, you support them for the fact that they have certain rights. But supporting them in their rights does not mean that you're agreeing with their orientation or their viewpoint. And I think this is one lesson that we need to also teach the West. So the West, I'm talking about, Australia is of course included in the West, although you're in Far East. but the thing is, you have the same community and the same set of values. So one thing that we need to probably remind the West is that this is one area in which, in fact, not just this one, but all areas in which they hold this key is that they are champions of liberty, they're champions of freedom of expression. But in this particular area, they don't allow people to differ with them. So, in spite of being champions of difference of opinion, if you start talking against, if you think that you have a different view with regard to the LGBTQ community, they'll just not only stare at you, they'll even gobble you up maybe if they can. So I think this is one area in which, if you're able to make sense and put across your point of view, this is the place, and that is that you remind them that every person has a right to his or her own view. So if I have a view which might be against the LGBTQ community or their orientation, I have a right to that view, and I don't insist on that view. It's my view. I don't insist that you also have that view. So I think these are the two extremes that we are encountering: hate on the part of Muslims and extremism on the part of the West, which does not allow any person to speak against this community. So I think the matter is somewhere in between. Neither should we hate such people, and nor should people in the West who think that if we open our tongues or maybe open our mouths against them or have a different view, then we are sort of, we are trying not to give them any space. This does not at all boil down to that. The third thing that I normally say in this regard is that our younger generation, our youngsters, when they ask about how exactly should we behave or what exactly should be our outlook, I would say. So I always tell them that when you face this question as parents, the best thing to point them to is the scheme of God. So when God created man, when God created human beings on this face of this earth, He did not create two Adams, He did not create two Eves. So He started off with Adam and Eve. He started off with a family which consists of opposite genders. So if you look at the scheme of God supports the family that we support, the family system that we support. I think this is sufficient first level guidance that you can give to your younger children, and the rest to your adult children is that if you interact with such people, for example, I can tell you that in Montreal there is a place which is called a gay mosque, a mosque whose imam is declaredly gay, and people who have this orientation, they pray behind him. So the thing is that without condoning and without maybe thinking that we are judging them, this is the extent to which people have gone. So I think that living in a way that we have maybe our own identity and we are able to preserve that, but at the same time not go to that extreme so as to regard them to be inferior people and hateful people and people who are worthless. This is something which is that we need to revisit. So one thing which the Muslim camp needs to revisit is this: to stop that spite and hate that they have, respect them as human beings, and if they are doing something wrong, okay, fine, God will take an account from them and wait for that time. And from the Western camp, this is something that we need to teach them, that if they are champions of liberty and freedom, then this liberty and freedom has to be exercised everywhere. So this is one challenge, and I would say that as parents who are sitting here, because I see parents normally getting very jittery, very, very afraid that if their own children get exposed to this society, then they might get affected themselves. So they normally stop them from intermingling with these people. So I think this is one area that instead of stopping them, you should create that awareness. And if friendship develops naturally, it is no harm in that being developing. And at the same time, you can remain your distance and identity. You can maintain that. So this was the first thing that I wanted to say regarding the challenges that we face. The second important challenge that we face, the younger generation faces, I think, is the controlling mentality of the parents. Even when children grow up, they are adults. I'm not talking about legally adult age, which is 18. Much before that, our children are mature when they are 12, 13, at times even earlier than that. So you see, you have to understand that as far as your children are concerned, they are now individuals in their own right. You, as a parent, were required to groom them, to mentor them when they were growing up. You were required to teach them, spend time with them. But once they reach this mature age, then as far as their life is concerned, we should leave some of the decisions that they need to make about themselves to them. And they might be wrong decisions, because remember, it's only through experience and making mistakes do we learn. If we start controlling their lives and not letting them take their own decisions, we will groom people who don't have any self-belief in them. They'll not have any confidence in them. So in order for them to have this confidence, you let them have their way, so to speak. And this doesn't mean that you are not there or not any part of their lives. No, you can be an advisor. You can, tell all sorts of things of your own experience, but don't force them to adopt your own worldview. Don't force them to dress the way you would like to dress. Yes, you have all the liberty to tell them what modesty is and how modestly you should dress. But then, if they have a different view, let them do what they want to, because now they are individuals in their own right. And just as you are an individual in your own right, and you would not expect someone to dictate your life, I think it is here that a lot of reform needs to be done amongst our Desi parents, because I do give this allowance to them that they are overprotective, because living in the West and living in such a country, you always feel that your children might succumb to some of the lures and some of the things that you would have imagined. But remember, this is a conscious decision that all of us have taken. If you have taken this decision to live in the West, then there are certain things that are bound to happen. And the best way to tackle such situations is that you have to give them this freedom. What we say often, we say is that you have to learn to let go. Once your child is an adult, you have to learn to let go and let him or her learn from the experience. They'll make mistakes, but then remember, it is these mistakes which are going to really egg them on and make them realize that what in future they should not do. The third challenge, I think, which also faces our Desi parents, and especially parents who live in these countries, is the way they teach religion to their children. I think once again we need to revisit that, because the way they teach religion to their children is again a set of negative or positive imperatives, that you do this, you don't do that. You sit here, you don't sit there. You eat that, you don't eat that. You wear this, you don't wear this. It's like a set of orders that we give to our children. I think this needs serious revisitation. And my proposal, or my understanding and my suggestions are that instead of forcing your children to do some things that you think they should do religiously, you should always start off by, for example, telling them the wisdom behind doing certain things. Why, for example, should they dress modestly? Why is it that they should eat halal or zabiha food? Why is it that they are required to pray? So you see, the why is the most important thing, because once you are able to make them realize the why, and if that why is communicated in the right way, I can tell you out of experience that they will leap to your whatever you would like to say. Because you see, whatever religion tells us is so close to our heart, it's so close to our nature, that when you say these things in the right way, people are going to leap towards it, because it's so close to their own nature as well. Let me give you just one example. We are very ambitious that our children should become namazi and unconscious of their prayer, and we would like them to be, take this prayer as a challenge, and as soon as they turn 10 or 12, 11 or 12, we would like them to pray 5 times a day. I think this is an ambitious ask from them. The best way, first of all, again, is to make them understand that why is it that we need to pray at all. So in order to make them understand the need for the prayer, we need to go back a little and tell them that, look here, as individuals, we are all indebted to God. Because the things that we have, the favors that we enjoy, the health that we have, the meals that we can eat, the access to education and to health facilities that we have, if you start analyzing the cause and the cause behind each of them, ultimately you'll find it is God who's behind all these things. And in this world, whenever we feel that someone is being kind to us, we always say thank you to that person, isn't it? It comes naturally to us. So all that we need to do is make our children connect to the fact that, look here, whatever you enjoy is basically a blessing from God. And this namaz or this prayer is nothing but an acknowledgement of, it's like a way to say thank you to Him. So when you place your head on the ground, your highest part on the ground, you are basically acknowledging Him and saying thank you to God, and saying that, God, well, I couldn't have imagined that I have all these favors. I never earned them. I just inherited them. And I would like to thank you for this. So you see, if you tell them that this prayer is nothing but an expression of that thanksgiving, they'll immediately realize the why of it. And then next comes how you can make them punctual in the prayer. So, for example, start off by telling them, okay, start off by praying just one namaz a day, and try to understand the meaning of the namaz and the prayer. And once you start enjoying the namaz, because now you're conversing with God, you can maybe add another in a couple of months, and then another in a couple of months. So take it in a gradual way. Otherwise, if you don't take it in a gradual way, what will generally happen is that you'll just burden them. First of all, without telling them why they need to pray, and secondly, by telling them that this is something that they must do immediately, without realizing that all of us, we also became regular in our prayers much later in life, maybe, and we also realized the importance of the prayer at a certain point of time. So I think this way of teaching religion to them, in which you tell them the reason, is the way that is the right way. And if we ourselves are not aware of the reason, then first of all, we must be educated enough so that when our children grow up and they ask questions, so either we are able to answer these basic questions at least, or we can refer our child to someone who has enough knowledge so that when something comes up, he or she is able to make sense of that. So the fourth challenge that I think I'd like to point out here, which is again something that we face whilst living in the West, is that as far as we are concerned, we have to understand that whilst living here, because of the fact that if you look at the world today, so there is a lot of terrorism going on, a lot of extremism going on in the name of Islam, and people killing one another. We're having bomb blasts. We're having so many other things. We had the cartoon controversy a few years ago that keeps on, raising its head every now and then in Denmark, in the Scandinavian countries. So we need to once again make this point to them that there is this misunderstood narrative of Islam, according to which basically we are told that Islam is a religion which does not tolerate other religions, and it says that you have to rule. No one else has the right to rule except Islam. So the global agenda which Islam, or people who are advocates of Islam, have, is that they have to conquer the world. And if at the moment this is not happening, it is just because we don't have enough power. So this is a flawed narrative, and it is this narrative which has taken the better of the likes of Mullah Omar, Osama bin Laden, Abu Bakr Baghdadi, and all the people who today, in the name of Islam, think that they would like to subjugate the world. So it is here once again that you have to understand that as far as the Quran is concerned, yes, it talks about certain elements of jihad. It talks about subjugating the disbelievers, but then that has a very specific context, and that context is that God Almighty on His own has directed His messengers that in the prophetic era, the era in which God's messengers come, the reward of punishment of people is settled in this world, because God's representative on earth, which is a messenger of God, he settles the man. He basically delivers the truth. None of us, of course, can rival him in any way. And once that truth is conveyed, ultimately, the people who are in front of him, they are rewarded or punished. So the likes of apostasy and waging war against disbelievers, and, for example, not making friends with disbelievers or not praying for their forgiveness, these are some of the punishments which only prophets of God are authorized to give to their adversaries, because their adversaries are guilty of denying the truth deliberately. This is a law which is specific to the era of God's messengers. So, unfortunately, we have pulled this law and made it applicable to the post-prophetic era as well, and we think that we have to copy those messengers in this matter as also. So if we make our children realize that this is an area in which we are at fault, and if we are terrorizing the world for the sake of subjugating them, then this is a flawed narrative that we should actually revisit. And today, every non-Muslim that we encounter is like our own brother or sister, and we have to present the message of religion. And unfortunately, we have made the Quran a book for the Muslims, whereas the Quran calls itself to be a book for mankind. It's basically sent for mankind, and we have confined it to our own selves. And by not telling especially I'm talking about the Abrahamic faiths, the Jews and the Christians and the Muslims, by not telling them that we have originated from the same source. And it's just that the Quran is the final version of the same guidance that was brought down by all the prophets of God. Every single prophet from Adam to Muhammad, peace be upon them, they preach the same message. So basically, we are the followers and fraternity of the same family of prophets. And if we subscribe to the Quran more than the Bible, then there's just one reason, and that is we have God's word preserved in its original language. So without denouncing the Bible, in fact, I teach the Bible weekly, and I can tell you from my own experience that 85%, if not even more, message of these scriptures is exactly the same as what the Quran tells us. There is this 15% or 10% in which prophethood is of course discussed, in which this difference arises. Otherwise, as far as we are concerned, not only do we share the same human values as human beings, at the same time, we also share the same religious guidance, which brings us even closer together. So this is something which our younger lot has to learn, that as individuals, not only should they connect themselves to the Quran, which is of foremost importance, and that would be my last point. I'm just going to explain that. But even before that, they must also have belief in the previous books of God, which is something that we have already been told by the Quran. And that belief can only be professed if we at least have some idea of what these books speak. So maybe just as we read the Quran, our children also need to get themselves acquainted with the previous scriptures. And not only our children, I think people like us as well, because we have to remember that they have also sprung from the same source, which is God. And if we are able to do that, you can see how clearly we can come together by making them understand that all the books of God, they are equal for us. And if the Quran holds a degree of superiority, it's only because we have it in its original language. We don't have the Torah or the New Testament in their original language. We just have translations. So we have to rely on the original. And we are not showing any bias when we rely on the Quran. Had we the Torah or the previous books in their original language, we might have gone to them as well. So this is like an objective reality that we have for them. So this is the fourth thing I wanted to say here, that as individuals who belong to this fraternity, our scope and our horizon should be very, very, very wide. And this can only happen if we know that how we have sprung forth from the same fraternity, and at the same time we belong to the same brotherhood. Finally, I think the fifth point I wanted to raise here is regarding the fact that if we have to be individuals who are God conscious, if we are to be individuals who are connected to God, I think this is an area that we need to constantly work on. And the best way to be a God conscious person is to connect ourselves to God by realizing that God is someone who is always looking after us. He is someone who's taking care of us. He's someone who might make us go through certain trials, but then those trials are also meant for our own benefit, because we develop from those trials. If trials come our way, we become stronger than before. We have an opportunity to come closer to God. So to become a God-conscious person is to start off with the fact that we, first of all, acknowledge all His favors. And when we start off the namaz, the first words that we utter when we say Surah Fatiha, we say Alhamdulillah. So the word Alhamdulillah is basically a recognition of the fact that we say, thank you, God. All gratitude is due towards God, because it is He who has given us all these favors, and therefore we have to express this huge thanksgiving that we owe to Him. And remember that this is something that if we are able to understand, then the first introduction of God that we have is a person who is a caregiver, not someone that we need to fear, which is a wrong introduction of God that we have of our own selves, and we maybe pass it on to our children also. So the first and the foremost introduction that we have is someone who is really, really looking after us, someone who is a caregiver, and in return we are saying thank you for His favors. So I think the next thing that is important in this regard is to have a very strong connection with God through the Quran. So the Quran is a book that is like a powerhouse. It's like something which guides us in a very, very potent way, in a very, very strong way. So my suggestion here is that every one of us should have that Quran connection in a two-pronged approach. The first is forget about the Arabic for once, and this is one approach in which you just pick up the book of the Quran and read the Quran in the language that you are comfortable in. It could be Urdu, it could be English, it could be German, it could be any first language that you are comfortable with. So start reading the Quran, with a good translation, and make it a habit, maybe 5 or 10 minutes every day. And side by side, start off another assignment, I would say, especially the younger lot, if not even the elder ones, that start learning Quranic Arabic, so that after a couple of years, when the Quran is read or heard, you are able to directly understand and make sense of it. You would not imagine the impact it will have on your hearts. You see, even if a simple translation has a strong impact, look at what would happen if the words of God, they directly land on your heart. Because you see, it's God speaking, and you're able to understand what He's speaking about. So when He's speaking in this way, the thing which is added with the Arabic, if you understand it directly, is that you are propelled to follow what it says. So the message of the Quran, which is given to you through a translation, is a plain message. It will tell you what to do. But the motivation to do it is something is added when you think that God is speaking to you, and that can only happen once you are able to understand the Quran directly. So make this a target in life. And in every one of us, I can tell you in this COVID era that just has hopefully left us, A number of websites and apps have developed in which I'm not talking about learning Arabic as a whole. I'm talking about learning just the Quranic Arabic. So that in a couple of years, maybe you can just give maybe 30 minutes or 20 minutes each day. And in a couple of years, you'll be sufficiently equipped to understand the Quran whenever it's read, and to be able to make sense out of the words of the Quran. So that is an impact that is missing in our lives. That is really missing in our lives. And you would not imagine the impact it can really drive you. It can make you realize how you can really move forward in life and how you can really become a righteous individual. And finally, I would say that this sharing of this thanking God is something that has to be done not only by our words, by doing namaz and of course other rituals, but it has to be done by becoming good exemplars of morality. So I think it is once again here that we need to perhaps revisit. I'm not talking about individuals who are born and raised here, because for them morality and good conduct is like second nature. I mean, they always speak the truth. They're always honest. They're always individuals who are geared towards these things. But again, you have to be more sensitive towards the needs of other people who are around you. So people maybe who are handicapped, people who are underprivileged, people who are orphans, people who are old, even animals who need shelter. So that kindness that we have received from God, it must be passed on. It must be transferred to people who are around us. So to thank God, it's not sufficient that we just pray and thank Him by the tongue. We must thank Him through our own actions and deeds also, and that is that we share our blessings as much as we can with people who are around us, who might not be in a position to have the same privileges as you have. But it's just a question of looking at people. We still have people who don't have shelters, who are homeless. We still have people around us who need this. Even if they don't need shelter, they need kind words to be spoken to them. They need a smile on your face with which you can talk to them, so that they have someone who they can fall back on. So remember, humanity is not all about wealth and riches and luxury and gadgets. It's also about emotions. So this emotional empathy that we should have is something that should bring us closer to people who are in some way or in some sort deprived. So these are some of the things that I wanted to point out, that as people living in the West, we must be aware to the challenges of our own faith, and at the same time must realize that we are part of the same fraternity. We share a very vast heritage, not only regarding human values, but also religious values. So we should be tolerant, we should be respectful, we should teach our children humanity and teach them religion in a way that they are told the reason why they should do certain things, and stop imposing ourselves on our children, giving them space, allowing them to do, once they become mature, to do what they like, but at the same time maintaining our paternal relationship with them by telling them that whatever you do, I'm still your father, I'm your mother, you can always come back to me. We can make amends of anything that's gone wrong. Instead of scolding them, instead of maybe showing anger to them, this will not be productive. It might satisfy our ego, but it's not going to be any help in making them realize the mistake that they've done. So it's only love that can make them realize this, and that love has to be unconditional. Thank you very much. These are some of the words I wanted to say.
If any of you have any questions, please, I'm opening the floor. Please feel free to ask them.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Salman Tumani. Thank you, Doctor, for coming here first up and sharing your knowledge. Our children currently, they are teenagers or approaching teenagers. One thing that we would like to, some sort of guiding for you. Down the track, few years down the track, they'll be, at age where they'll be choosing their life partners. Mm-hmm. What happens if they do decide to choose a partner who is a non-Muslim, and they go ahead with that decision? In that case, would that marriage be considered as halal or not halal? Because it happens. Doesn't happen a lot of the time, but it does happen. So what's your point of view?
So my point of view is that whether it's halal or haram should be a question that they should have in mind, instead of we telling them, because we might be differing with them. The question is the sensitivity which they should have. And if they don't have the sensitivity and they think that marrying a non-Muslim is fine, then I would regard them to go ahead. I would give them the signal. If I have a father and I have a daughter or a son who I have raised, and he or she has a different worldview regarding marriage, so marriage is halal, it's perfectly halal, but of course it would be in defiance to God. But at the same time, if the adult children, they are willing to go ahead with that, so I think this is a decision that they are making, and we should let them do that. We should support them for that. Supporting does not mean that we agree with their choice. It only means that as parents You can always rely on us as parents. You can still come and visit our house. You can still stay with whomever you marry. Because you see, we have to remember that the choices which our children make, they are themselves responsible for those choices. We are not responsible for those choices. We are responsible for our choices. So if they make a wrong choice, in our view, I mean, it's something that they need to contemplate. They need to answer to God. But in our capacity, what we need to do is advise them, to suggest to them that they are not making a right choice. But if they are bent upon following that choice, we should fully support them.
Fair enough, Dr. Sir. And they will be responsible for this.
Of course, they will be responsible.
And they'll be answerable or accountable here and in the long run as well.
Yep.
But a lot of the time it is said that the Quran says if a man can.
I mean, the Quran says other things also. I mean, there are several things which the Quran says, but it doesn't mean that if you marry a person who is legally or Quranically not allowed, then that marriage would be legally not considered to be an Islamic marriage. All that we can say is that it's a marriage which has taken place in defiance of God's directive, but its legality cannot be questioned. I mean, the children they'll bear, they'll be absolutely legal, but what will happen is that we will call it a marriage that has taken place in defiance of God. But remember, it is the choice of the children. If they choose to defy God, for example, or let me tell you another scenario. At times, our younger lot does not think that this is defiance, because they think that they are going to make their spouse or their fiancé come closer to their own religion, and maybe one day they are able to even convert him. So you see, you have to at times analyze some of the thinking that is going on in their minds. And if they think that it's like a gradual thing that they might do ultimately, or maybe if it never happens, that could also be a scenario.
Their life.
Yeah, so I think they are responsible for their lives. All that we need to tell them is what right and wrong are, and then let them do what they will.
Fair enough, Doctor. I do agree with what you're saying. Let them make the decision and be responsible and accountable for their decision. But my question is, according to the Sharia or the divine law, whatever you call it, right? Is it a halal marriage?
Of course it is. Yes, it is still it is recognized. I mean, I would say that children who are born from such marriage cannot be regarded as illegal in any case. So when I say halal, it doesn't mean that it's certified by Islam. I only mean that it is legally something in which when two individuals declare themselves to be openly husband and wife, then they are following the norms of religion. In which you see nikah, if you look at the Arabic word, nikah means an open declaration of living as a husband and wife, regardless of faith. But Islam imposes another condition, of course, that the person should be a monotheist. He should be a believer. And if someone is not a believer, it does not affect that legality of marriage. All that it affects is that he is a person who is not following certain. I mean, let me give you another example. For example, a person who is a Muslim but he doesn't pray at all. So what would you call such a person? You say that, well, he's still a Muslim, and he's a person. He's deviated from the teachings of Islam. He's not praying. So it's a very similar thing. You will not regard that person to be a non-Muslim. You'll just say that he's being careless in his attitude.
That's fair. The person still stays a Muslim, but the marriage,
of course,
according to the Sharia law,
it's still valid.
Considered as haram or not.
It cannot be regarded as haram at all.
It cannot be questioned.
The question would be that, for example, you see, two things can happen. Either you can make a legislation in a Muslim state in which you will say that we will not accept or register any marriage which takes place with a non-Muslim. That could be a law that is passed. And if a law is passed, of course, then it would be an illegal marriage. The state will not recognize it. Or if you don't pass such a law and leave this decision to children, then of course the accountability is going to take place in the hereafter, and they are going to be responsible. But you just cannot say that once this has taken place, it's going to produce children who are illegal, or the marriage itself is illegal. Marriage is basically a contract. Yeah, it's a contract given consensually by the mutual consent, and a declaration of the fact that we are living as husband and wife. So that is what marriage is all about. So being an Islamic marriage is something which is over and above that. All that you can say is it's not an Islamic marriage, it's a common marriage. You still married, but you can, what I'm trying to say is that it does not in any way create this problem for the couple that the children that they are having are haram or they are illegal.
It's still a halal marriage.
Yes, of course, yes.
Thank you.
But further to this, for example, what I understand, that if you marry the Ahl Kitab, like Christians and Jews, men married to the Ahl Kitab, it's okay.
That is already fun. So we're talking the reverse. a girl marrying a person from the people of the book, like the Jew or Christian, and even marrying a Hindu or a Sikh or any person of any religion. So remember, it's not just the Abrahamic religions that are at hand. Today, I have seen girls making choices. Look at people who are marrying atheists. I mean, they are born, they could be Christians, they could be Muslims, but they are doing nothing. They are just Muslims by name. So one thing that I probably want to talk about also is the fact that we are facing a wave of atheism all over the world. So people have no religion this time, and they can call themselves Muslims or Christians, but in effect they have no religion, because they are born Muslims or they are born Christians, but they are neither practicing Muslims nor practicing Christians. So to practice religion is another thing. That's something which is added thing. Without practicing, if you are still a Muslim by name, so a marriage is still a marriage, although it could be a different sort of a marriage. It could be a deviant form of marriage, but still a marriage. So you cannot classify it in any way as a wrong marriage or an illegal marriage. It's like a deviant. It's still, yeah.
Can I complicate this and add another layer?
Okay.
And it's considered a taboo, but we live in a state in ACT where gay marriages are legal now. If hypothetically tomorrow a parent is confronted with a situation where their child chooses to marry a person of the same sex, how does a Muslim parent deal with a situation like that?
In the same way, you will advise them that they are doing something which is not recommended. It is something which is against nature. It is something that is Islamically wrong. You will advise them with full force and with full suggestion, but leave them the choice to do what they would like. I had a friend. So this is about 4 or 5 years ago in San Diego in the US. So he was very worried because his daughter wanted to marry she was a lesbian. She was like 18 or 20 years old, and she wanted to marry a lesbian. And he came running all the way to me and said that, what should I do? I said, well, you should have done something when she was growing up. And now that she's grown up and she has her own choice to make, yes, you can tell her what right and wrong are. And she already knows that. You don't even need to tell them. But if she's made this choice, okay, she's going to face God one day, and let her do this. Because what he was saying was that I'm not going to attend the marriage. I'm not going to allow that other girl to live with me. If they come and visit, I'm not going to give a bedroom to them. I said, this is a wrong attitude. Because you see, your relationship with your child is as a father and a mother. That must never break, whatever that child does. He could be a very evil child, but you see, you have to provide that comfort and that solace to that child to make him realize or her realize that there is at least one relationship on which they can fall back, however wrong they might be. But this doesn't mean that you're accepting their wrongs. You have their own difference of opinion. It's exactly like accepting the gay or the LGBTQ community amongst yourselves, that you don't agree with them, but what can you do? You're not going to run away from them. Look at what the Quran is. I always give this example from the Quran. The Quran, at one instance, has said, it says that the biggest and the gravest evil that you can do is to commit shirk, is to be a polytheist. And God says that except for polytheism, I will forgive everything. But in one place, the Quran says that even if your parents are mushrik, if they are polytheists, the Quran says, Sahib huma fi dunya ma'rufa. You deal with them affectionately. Don't run away from them. So on the one hand, polytheism is something which is a gravest crime. God is not going to, forgive that crime. But He says that if your parents are polytheists, you should still deal with them affectionately. I think it speaks a lot. It means that, the LGBTQ community is not, of course, committing shirk. It's a step lower than that. So if people who are mushrik, with them we are told that we should deal with them affectionately, I think this is an object lesson. It tells us that if they have a different decision, you don't agree with that, okay, fine. This is your decision in not agreeing with that. But that doesn't take away the fact that you should be not polite to them, not gentle to them, and not be a parent to them. So your parentage should always be intact. You can express your displeasure. You can express your, disagreement in a very polite way. But that's all that you should do. Because you see, in California, there is this. I think there must be this cult here in Australia also. There's this cult which is called they worship the devil. So there is a devil worshipping cult in California near Hollywood, where they worship God. They get naked and they do all sorts of things because they think they are worshiping the devil in a very specific way. So look at God's courage and His magnanimity. He's allowed people to do whatever they do in this world. And He says that I'm going to catch them one day. and He's allowed people to make hay, make anything work. So if God is so tolerant, if God is so magnanimous, we should take cue from that and let people live the life they want to live, and wait for that judgment day. That's precisely what I said earlier on, that let's stop judging people, minding our own business, looking at where we have gone wrong instead of trying to determine where other people are going wrong. This is something of a very common thing with all of us. I myself include my own self in it, that we are always talking about what other people are doing wrong. So let's more concentrate on what we are doing wrong. I think that is the way forward. And yes, of course, these things do bother us, but I think that botheration should be taken care of once we are able to communicate our viewpoint. That's all that we need to do, that we don't agree with you and we would politely request you to reconsider it, and that's all. You are a destiny, you are a master of your own destiny. As an individual, every person is, and let every person follow what he or she thinks to be right.
So you're not actually accountable for your future generations.
You're
For
not.
example, your
I mean,
son
once-
decided to marry a non-Muslim, and then all your
Absolutely
grandchildren,
not.
they're not Muslims.
Absolutely
then,
not.
No?
No, you are responsible
But
for your own
won't you
self.
feel guilty that I practice my religion so beautifully, and now my future generations have.
You see, to them, that is more beautiful than you. I cannot impose my religion on other people. So you see, you have to
But what is
understand.
about it? Aren't we doing right now, trying to teach everybody to be on the straight path?
We would like to do that, but you see, at the same time, we should respect that straight path that is straight for us could be crooked for the other person. For that person, a straight path could be something different.
So we let them.
So we let them do what they want. I mean, when they are growing up, in their growing age, we will tell them what we think right is. We will not leave them, I mean, in any way. We'll groom them, we'll tell them about God, we'll tell them of the sensitivity that we have regarding same-sex marriages, we'll tell them everything that we think to be right. But once they get mature, now they have their own ideas. So now they are critically evaluating their own things. And now they are independent human beings. So now we are no longer responsible for them. We were responsible when they were growing up, when the time was to groom them. Once that time has passed, they're now they're on their own.
Mansoor Zaid. I just want to extend the same question. Actually, thanks for raising that. Just a different way of putting the same question. And I need an answer from purely, not from a secular point of view, rather more a religious point of view. Where is the boundary of, in terms of accountability of the parents in raising their children according to their faith or not? Where this
Right.
boundary starts and finishes?
This boundary starts. Yes. So it ends when, as soon as a person or the child is mentally mature enough to take his or her own decisions, when he becomes an individual in his or her own right. Because now that person is answerable to God. I mean, I am answerable for my children as long as they are growing up, and this growing up age can differ with different children. See, at times a 12-year-old is sufficient, I mean, is old enough. At times a 16-year-old is not old enough. So you can say that the rule of thumb is that as long as a child is willing to take any harsh attitude or forceful attitude from a parent without getting hurt, because you see, when you are able to force your children to do something, at a younger age, they will accept that compulsion and they'll forget that the next day. So as long as that happens, that they accept that forceful attitude from you, that is the time in which you can use a little force and maybe compel them. But as soon as they have their own independent thinking and they know what right and wrong are, then it is the best time to educate them, to let them do what they would like to do and tell them that, well, if you choose this path, you might end up in a great spot of bother. And let them make that mistake. I mean, we're talking about an ultimate mistake of choosing a fiancé. Much before that, there are other choices they also make. So let them go through that procedure of making a choice. And let them make a mistake. Because unless they are given this choice to make a mistake, they'll never be able to learn. Yes, the wise ones among them might be able to learn through experience. But you see, there are a lot of things that can only be learned once you taste the fruit of those things. This is how mankind is. Look at what happened to Adam, our progenitor. He was stopped from tasting a certain fruit, but he ended up doing that. So you see, you should not be concerned at people making mistakes. What you should be concerned is that after making a mistake, we must be ashamed, we must regret our mistakes, and we must start again. This is what God wants us to do. It's not sinning which counts as much as our attitude after sinning, that we are remorseful, that we are repetitive, that you would not like to do it again. That is what God wants. He does not want to make us angels. That is something that we cannot. He wants us to become human beings who are always penitent for what they do, always realize their mistakes, always make amends for their mistakes, and always say sorry to people if they make mistakes and start again.
Dr. Your answer is still a secularist answer. I'm looking for a reference from either from Hadith
The
or
Quran, the Quran
supports this
See,
connotation.
I mean, this is not.
Where
I don't
the
regard it
Quran
to be a secular answer. I said this is something that we have found from the Quran and the Hadith. You see, the Quran says that you are accountable for your actions. This is something the Quran says that every person is accountable for his actions. Is that agreeable? So when does a person become a person? That's something for us to judge. When does a person actually becomes accountable to God? God has not given us these guidelines that this is the age. I mean, the Quran does not say 18 years or 16 years. This is human experience. All over the world, since time immemorial, maturity is something which God has not left as a benchmark, as a certain age. So the Quran has said that as soon as your people reach maturity, you hand back your trust to them. For example, if they are orphans and they are able to look after themselves, then you should not be their guardians and let them have their wealth back. So this gives us that guidance that as soon as a person is in a position to mind his own wealth and at the same time know what right and wrong are, so we derive it from that. It's a derivation. Otherwise, if you're looking for an age from the Quran or Hadith, you'll not find that. The Quran gives us this principle that as soon as people get mature, then they are responsible for their actions.
Except I'd like to add to that. Sorry, I'll come back to your question. The stakes are much higher and the repercussions are deeper
Much
because
deeper.
what goes on Facebook stays on Facebook. So, we didn't have that growing up. The previous generations could make mistakes and, overcome those without
Yes.
having any record
Right.
of their doings. But now,
It is. I do understand that. It's much more complicated. The repercussions are much more deep and they are long lasting, and the errors that they can make can have a very deep impact. But you see, that's something, if you look at each age, it's like if you look at hindsight, it's always easy to comment hindsight. So the Facebook of today was a different Facebook of yesterday. So every era has its own Facebook. The only thing is that it changes its form.
Thank you. Yes, you had a question.
So thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience. So I would like to share the incident happened in India.
Mm-hmm.
I could be a little bit wrong, so I just request everyone to be patient. So in India, one of the state called Andhra Pradesh, one girl who goes to college, she wears a scarf and goes to college. The India is we are minority, Muslims are very
Yeah.
minor,
Correct.
like around 3%, 30%. So when she was wearing the scarf, that time BJP was ruling. It's a Hindu government. So they were saying that you should not wear that religious kind of thing into the college. And she said, this is God has commanded me to do that. So I will do that. I will wear this in the college, and then I'll come to the college. And then they said it was like spread as a big news all over the India,
Mm-hmm.
and all the schools and college they were like introducing this new rule as no one should wear your headscarf and
yeah.
come to the school because school is common for everyone. It's not for representing the religious stuff and all those stuff. And it came as for Hindus also they put that the tilak and
Yeah.
some people wear that the orange scarf on the neck and all those things happen. And it came to the court. In the court, the lawyer is not a Muslim. He has brought up the thing like this is not a farl in Islam. This is like a sunnah. Whoever wants to wear the scarf, they can wear it. And the other lawyer could be a Muslim or the other Islamic scholars. They have put on the Facebook that it is not a sunnah. This is farl. Even many of the Muslims came to know that this is not the sunnah, this is the farl, because Quranic verses says it is cover your head and then bring that scarf
On your chest,
front of the
yeah.
chest. So it's coming in the Quran, so it's a farl. So what I felt here when I come here, like we were expecting them, the Islamic environment. I started asking everyone, are you a Muslim? Because Pakistan, from India, Pakistan for us is a different view, it's an Islamic country and as soon as you see.
It's supposedly in Islam.
Yeah, because I said
Allegedly.
in a reverse way.
Yeah.
Some people may feel it like
Mhm.
why she is speaking like that, but I'm not fear of that.
That's
I
fine.
have to
That's
say that.
absolutely fine.
Because our point of view is different. Like even from your information, I have a different opinion from your
That's fine.
speaking.
That is
When
fine.
you say that forbid what is wrong and enjoin what is right. So when you say LGBTQ, we should not like let them give them a right. When we go back to the Lut alayhi salam era, it is like God has prohibited us.
Mhm.
So we should tell them this is wrong. Forbid what is wrong.
So I agree with you. I don't say that we don't tell them.
Yeah.
What I said was that if they have a right, for example, if they should not be discriminated with. For example, if there are certain human rights, they'll have a certain quota in the army, or there are certain other things which the rest of the lot enjoys and they are not given that. So I'm talking about the human rights. As human beings,
Yeah,
everyone
I
should
got
have the
what
same.
you said,
Yeah.
but what I was in an Islamic view, what he was said is, when you are saying in a secular way it is right, but when you go for the Islamic way, it is divided. What is wrong and what is right. So we know what is right and we know what is wrong because Islam has completed in before 1,400 years ago. We know what is wrong. So we should forbid what is wrong. We should enjoy.
So I agree with
right
that. I see, and I don't say that's anything wrong with that. I think, as I said, that we will express our view. We will disagree with them. We'll tell them that is not right. That's all that I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we will not start hating them. We will not start ostracizing them. We will not start telling them that they are inferior people of the world. They are people who are. I mean, God is not. God is someone who's going to belittle them. Yes, maybe God will do that, but let God decide that. So as
Yeah,
far as we are
we
concerned,
are not in the place of deciding that. We are in the place of like teaching them. Like
Of course
in the
we'll do
way
that.
of- in the way of, it's
We'll do
not
that.
about the forcing. We can't force anyone. We can force our little kids, like they are like below 18 years. We can force them do this, do not do this. But when we come to the other people, we can just educate them. We can't force anyone.
Correct.
So that's the thing. But when it comes to the Islamic point of view, when we take the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, what he did, he was breaking all the idols. Why he did that?
but the idols were. I mean, they were broken for an entirely different reason. He was not breaking them in order to curb polytheism. He was breaking them to tell them. He was trying to teach them. So these are two different things.
Yeah, our way of teaching is also something kind of like we have kind of the social medias and we are sharing what is wrong.
So you see, what I'm saying is that I agree with you in principle that we have to express our own opinion. But the thing is that expressing our own opinion should not make us, must not make us go away further from them. Look at what Prophet Jesus said. So you see, once he was sitting with people who were bad, and one of the Pharisees came to them and to him asked that you're sitting with these bad people, and his answer was that the sick need a doctor, the healthy don't need a doctor. And the people who are wrongdoing, they need someone to talk to them. And so I sit with them because they are people who are indulging in evil. So if you're asking me to stay away with them, what need is then for me to guide them? Because unless
sometimes we need to stay away from them. Like, see,
I agree. I mean, this is a choice. This is a personal choice.
If you are going to the some of the the pub or something, you cannot go there and then
What I'm saying, you see,
teach
in
them.
principle, you see, these are applications. I could be differing with you,